everybody. Welcome to the first Magical Mystery Hour Patreon bonus episode. I'm so happy to see you guys here. Yay! So what I decided to do tonight is read you a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft, who's an excellent horror writer. But I don't even want to say horror because it's not just horror. It's horror, mystery, intrigue. It's all kinds of things. And so it's a short story, so we won't be here, for the usual 2 to 3 hours. But very excited to add that I did convince David to do an improv based on the story after he's heard it. He only knows like the very basic outline of this story. Before we get started, I was just wondering if any of you guys have read this story before, anything H.P. Lovecraft, or is this the first time you're exposed to it? I said, just curious. You can let me know in the chat. Yeah, so very excited to be here tonight. I'm gonna get started in just a sec. I'm not gonna do any background music or anything like that, so that way, in case we do eventually want to add this in the podcast, it's a little easier to edit if I want to replace anything because I mispronounce something, anything like that. So I'm just gonna leave it like it is. I also realized just now I did not I already started it. I also did not turn off my autofocus. There it is. So I'm gonna do that now before it drives me crazy somewhere in the middle. All right. Hi Emily. Yeah, Kelsey, Diana, Nicole. Who else there? I saw Darren is here. I think Serona is here as well. I saw you liked the link in the chat. So, all right. So here we go. I'm gonna start this story. So again, this is H.P. Lovecraft. It's called The Outsider. The Outsider starts with a quote by poet Keats. It goes as follows. That night, the Baron dreamt of many a woe, and all his warrior guests, with shade and form of witch and demon and large coffin worm, were long benightmared. And thus, the story begins. Unhappy is he to whom the memories of childhood bring only fear and sadness. Wretched is he who looks back upon lone hours in vast and dismal chambers with brown hangings and maddening rows of antique books, or upon odd watches in twilight groves of grotesque, gigantic, and vine-encumbered trees that silently wave twisted branches far aloft. Such a lot the gods gave to me, the dazed, the disappointed, the barren, the broken. And yet, I am strangely content and cling desperately to those sere memories when my mind momentarily threatens to reach beyond to the other. I know not where I was born, save the castle was infinitely old and infinitely horrible, full of dark passages and having high ceilings where the eye could find only cobwebs and shadows. The stones in the crumbling corridors seemed to always hideously damp, and there was an accursed smell everywhere, as of the piled-up corpses of dead generations. It was never light, so that I used sometimes to light candles and gaze steadily at them for relief. Nor was there any sun outdoors, since the terrible trees grew high above the topmost accessible tower. There was one black tower which reached above the trees into the unknown outer sky, but that was partly ruined and could not be ascended save by a well-nigh impossible climb up the sheer wall, stone by stone. I must have lived years in this place, but I cannot measure the time. Beings must have cared for my needs, yet I cannot recall any person except myself, or anything alive but the noiseless rats and bats and spiders. I think that whoever nursed me must have been shockingly aged, since my first conception of a living person was that of something mockingly like myself, yet distorted, shriveled, and decaying like the castle. To me, there was nothing grotesque in the bones and skeletons that stowed some of the stone crypts deep down among the foundations. I fantastically associated these things with everyday events and thought them more natural than the colored pictures of living beings which I found in many of the moldy books. From such books, I learned all that I know. No teacher urged me or guided me, and I do not recall hearing any human voice in all those years, not even my own. For although I had read of speech, I had never thought to try to speak aloud. My aspect was a matter equally unthought of, for there were no mirrors in the castle, and I merely regarded myself by instinct as akin to the youthful figures I saw drawn and painted in the books. I felt conscious of youth because I remembered so little. Outside, across the putrid moat, and under the dull mute trees, I would often lie and dream for hours about what I'd read in books, and would longingly picture myself amongst gay crowds in the sunny world beyond the endless forest. I once tried to escape from the forest, but as I went further from the castle, the shade grew denser and the air more filled with brooding fear. So I ran frantically back, lest I lose my way in a labyrinth of nighted silence. So, through endless twilights, I dreamed and waited, though I knew not what I waited for. Then, in the shadowy solitude, my longing for light grew so frantic that I could rest no more. I lifted entreating hands to the single black ruined tower that reached above the forest into the unknown outer sky. And at last, I resolved to scale that tower, fall though I might, since it were better to glimpse the sky and perish than to live without ever beholding day. In the dank twilight, I climbed the worn, aged stones till I reached the level where they ceased, and thereafter clung perilously to small footholds leading upward. Ghastly and terrible was the dead, stairless cylinder of rock. Black, ruined, and deserted, and sinister with startled bats for whose wings made no noise. But more ghastly and terrible still was the slowness of my progress. For climb as I might, the darkness overhead grew no thinner, and no chill as of haunted and venerable mold assailed me. I shivered as I wondered why I did not reach the light, and would have looked down had I dared. I fancied that night had come suddenly upon me, and vainly groped with one free hand for a window embrasure, that I might peer out and above and try to judge the height that I had attained. All at once, after an infinity of awesome, sightless crawling up that concave and desperate precipice, I felt my hand touch a solid thing, and I knew I must have gained the roof, or at least some kind of floor. In the darkness, I raised my free hand and tested the barrier, finding it stone and immovable. Then came a deadly circuit of the tower, clinging to whatever holds the slimy wall could give, till finally my testing hand found the barrier yielding, and I turned upward again, pushing the slab door with my head as I used both hands in my fearful ascent. There was no light revealed above, and as my hands went higher, I knew that my climb was for the nonce ended, since the slab was the trap door of an aperture leading to the level stone surface of greater circumference than the lower tower. No doubt the floor had some lofty and capacious observation tower. I crawled through carefully, and I tried to prevent the heavy slab from falling back into place, but failed in the latter attempt. As I lay exhausted on the stone floor, I heard the eerie echo of its fall, but hoped, when necessary, to pry it open later again. Believing I was now at a prodigious height, far above the accursed branches of the wood, I dragged myself up from the floor and fumbled about for windows, that I might look for the first time upon the sky and the moon and stars of which I had read. But on every hand I was disappointed, since all that I found were vast shelves of marble, bearing odious oblong boxes of disturbing size. More and more I reflected and wondered what hoary secrets might abide in this high apartment, so many eons cut off from the castle below. Then, unexpectedly, my hands came upon a doorway where hung a portal of stone, rough with strange chiseling. Trying it, I found it locked. But with a supreme burst of strength, I overcame all the obstacles, and I dragged it open inward. As I did, so there came to me the purest ecstasy I have ever known. For shining tranquilly through an ornate grating of iron and down a short stone passageway of steps that ascended the newly found doorway was the radiant full moon, which I had never seen before, save in dreams and in vague visions I dare not call memories. Fancying now that I had attained the very pinnacle of the castle, I commenced to rush up the few steps beyond the door, but the sudden veiling of the moon by the cloud caused me to stumble, and I felt my way more slowly in the dark. It was still very dark when I was reaching and grating, which I tried carefully, and I found unlocked, but which I did not open for fear of falling from the amazing height to which I had climbed. Then the moon came out. Most demoniacal of all shocks is that of the abysmally unexpected, grotesquely unbelievable. Nothing I had before undergone could compare in terror with what I now saw, with the bizarre marvels that the sight implied. The sight itself was simple as it was stupefying, for it was merely this. Instead of a dizzying prospect of treetops seen from a lofty eminence, there stretched around me on a level through the grating nothingness less than the solid ground, decked and diversified by marble slabs and columns and overshadowed by ancient stone church, whose ruined spire gleamed spectrally in the moonlight. Half unconscious, I opened the grating and staggered out upon the white gravel path that stretched away in two directions. My mind, stunned and chaotic as it was, still held the frantic craving for light, and not even the fantastic wonder which had happened could stay my course. I never knew nor cared whether my experience was insanity, dreaming, or magic, but was determined to gaze on brilliance and gaiety at any cost. I knew not who I was or what my surroundings might be. Though as I continued to stumble along, I became conscious of a kind of fearsome, latent memory that made my progress not wholly fortuitous. I passed under an arch out of that region of slabs and columns and wandered through the open country, sometimes following the visible road, but sometimes leaving it curiously to tread across meadows where only occasional ruins bespoke the ancient presence of a forgotten road. Once I swam across a swift river where crumbling, mossy masonry told of a bridge long vanished. Over 2 hours must have passed before I reached what seemed to be my goal, a venerable, ivied castle in a thickly wooded park, maddeningly familiar, yet full of perplexing strangeness to me. I saw that the moat was filled in and that some of the well-known towers were demolished, whilst new wings existed to confuse the beholder. But what I observed with chief interest and delight were the open windows, gorgeously ablaze with light and sending forth sound of gayest revelry. Advancing to one of those, I looked in and saw an oddly dressed company indeed, making merry and speaking brightly to one another. I had never seemingly heard human speech before, and could guess only vaguely what was said. Some of the faces seemed to hold expressions that brought up incredibly remote recollections. Others were utterly alien. I now stepped through the low window into the brilliantly lighted room, stepping as I did so from my single bright moment of hope to my blackest convulsion of despair and realization. The nightmare was quick to come, for as I entered, there occurred immediately one of the most terrifying demonstrations I had ever conceived. Scarcely had I crossed the sill where they descended upon the whole company, a sudden and unheralded fear of hideous intensity, distorting every face and evoking the most horrible screams from nearly every throat. Flight was universal, and in the clamor and panic, several fell in a swoon and were dragged away by their madly fleeing companions. Many covered their eyes with their hands and plunged blindly and awkwardly in their race to escape, overturning furniture and stumbling against the walls before they managed to reach one of the many doors. The cries were shocking, and as I stood in the brilliant apartment, alone and dazed, listening to their vanishing echoes, I trembled at the thought of what might be lurking near me, unseen. At a casual inspection, the room seemed deserted. But when I moved towards one of the alcoves, I thought I detected a presence there. A hint of motion beyond the golden arched doorway leading to another and somewhat similar room. As I approached the arch, I began to perceive the presence more clearly. And then, with the first and last sound I ever uttered, a ghastly elation that revolted me almost as poignantly as its noxious cause, I beheld in full, frightful vividness the inconceivable, indescribable, and unmentionable monstrosity, which had by its simple appearance changed a merry company to a herd of delirious fugitives. I cannot even hint what it was like, for it was a compound of all that is unclean, uncanny, unwelcome, abnormal, and detestable. It was the ghoulish shade of decay, antiquity, and desolation, the putrid, dripping eidolon of unwholesome revelation, the awful bearing of that which the merciful earth should always hide. God knows it was not of this world, or no longer of this world. Yet, to my horror, I saw in its eaten away and bone-revealing outlines a leering, abhorrent travesty of the human shape. and in its moldy, disintegrating apparel, an unspeakable quality that chilled me even more. I was almost paralyzed, but not too much so to make a feeble effort toward flight. A backward stumble which failed to break the spell in which the nameless, voiceless monster held me. My eyes bewitched by the glassy orbs which stared loathsomely into them, refused to close, though they were mercifully blurred, and shewed the terrible object but indistinctly after the first shock. I tried to raise my hand to shut out the sight, yet so stunned were my nerves that my arm could not fully obey my will. The attempt, however, was enough to disturb my balance, so that I had to stagger forward several steps to avoid falling. As I did so, I became suddenly and agonizingly aware of the nearness of the carrion thing, whose hideous, hollow breathing I half fancied I could hear. Nearly mad, I found myself able to throw out a hand to ward off the fetid apparition which pressed so close, when in one cataclysmic second of cosmic, nightmarish, and hellish accident, my fingers touched the rotting, outstretched paw of the monster beneath the golden arch. I did not shriek, but all the fiendish ghouls that ride the night wind shrieked for me as in that same second there crashed down upon my mind a single and fleeting avalanche of soul-annihilating memory. I knew, in that second, all that had been. I remembered beyond the frightful castle and the trees, and recognized the altered edifice in which I now stood. I recognized, most terrible of all, the unholy abomination that stood leering before me as I withdrew my sullied fingers from its own. But in the cosmos, there is a balm as well as a bitterness, and that balm is Nepenthe. In the supreme horror of that second, I forgot what had horrified me, and the burst of black memory vanished in a chaos of echoing images. In a dream, I fled from that haunted and accursed pile and ran swiftly and silently into the moonlight. When I returned to the churchyard place of marble and went down the steps, I found the stone trapdoor immovable. But I was not sorry, for I had hated the antique castle and the trees. Now I ride with the mocking and friendly ghouls on the night wind, and play by day amongst the catacombs of Nephrin Ka, in the sealed and unknown valley of Hadath by the Nile. I know that light is not for me, save for the moon over the rock tombs of the Neb, nor any gaiety save the unnamed feasts of Nitocris beneath the great pyramid. Yet, in my new wildness and freedom, I almost welcome the bitterness of alienage. For although Nepenthe has calmed me, I know always that I am an outsider, a stranger in this century, and among those who are still men. This I have known ever since I stretched out my fingers to the abomination within the great gilded frame. I stretched out my fingers and touched a cold and unyielding surface of polished glass. And that is H.P. Lovecraft's The Outsiders. The Outsider, singular. I hope you guys liked that story. What did you think? I'm trying to get to the end of my chat. Darren had read H.P. Lovecraft before. Yeah, I know. It's been a while for me too. And I saw this and I was like, ooh. Yeah. So that's the story, right? You spend all this time trying to find other people, civilization, your kind, only to find out that and then only to find out that you are the monster. But then you embrace it and realize I am who I am. Yes. And David says, wow, that was a lot. And I have to improv something on that. Yikes. Yes, you do. I had to read it. Yeah, it's such a cool story. I love to hear what you guys think. And I'm really excited to hear what David thinks about this story. Let me check it. Thanks, Emily. Emily says great storytelling. Let me get this up so I can see. I just have to switch a couple of my screens around before we can see David. David, okay, he's not quite at the piano yet. But thanks. Oh yeah, I forgot we have to get the dogs. So I will switch you over. I haven't switched over to David just yet, but I will switch you over to David. Maybe he can talk a little bit about the story and what he's going to be doing before he starts playing, or he can start playing and explain after. That's up to you, I suppose. It's the first time we're doing this, so we're kind of, seeing how we like it and what fits. But I will pass you over, David. I have to go get Lily so she doesn't ruin the whole thing. But so I'm gonna have 1 second. I'm gonna mute my mixer after this and then turn it over to David. So here you go. Welcome, David Benjamin.
All right. Hey, everybody. Let's see. Put these here, I guess. Well, no, wait. There. Amanda, do you want to hit record up there now? Do you want to hit record up there now? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. I paused. It's recording? Okay, I think she said it's recording. All right. So just in case this turns out good, or halfway decent, which hopefully it will. So yeah, that story was wow. I mean, she had given me a very, very, very short synopsis. You might want to. Oh no, never mind. Yeah, you just have to step over it. We've got really long cords connecting my camera to her computer upstairs, but one of them is sort of hanging in the air here because it's not quite long enough. So, okay, good. Dogs are on their way upstairs. Go upstairs, Lily. Let's go. No, that she thinks that means go outside. Upstairs, Lily. Okay, they're on their way up. Okay. All right. Sorry for the distractions, folks. So, yeah, that was. She had given me kind of a short synopsis of it. Like a couple sentences worth. It's about this guy who grows up, is alone for a long time and escapes the castle he's stuck in and finds his way to people, and they freak out, and he discovers he's the monster. So yeah, I had a little bit of an idea, but wow. She didn't say anything about it being like an Egyptian mummy, being the main protagonist, the character. That was a surprise at the end. I was like, oh, that's what's going on here. Okay, now this is making sense. Especially the climbing up the endless tower, scaling that wall, only to come out at ground level. Yeah, Darren. Yeah, so the mummy, presumably it was a mummy, saw himself in a mirror, and just in that instant when its hand touched the glass, he realized, that's me. I'm the one freaking everybody out. And he was like, well, all right, well, that's me. Okay, well, let's go with it. All right. right. So yeah, so how to improvise something on that? What I did a little bit of cheating in that as I was sitting here listening and realizing this was not a super short story, not like a 5 or 10 minute thing. This is going to be like a half hour, 40-minute thing. There might be a lot to remember. Um, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to jot down some notes, kind of the high points or the low points, depending on how you look at it, of what was going on. I don't know. I've got them on my iPad screen here. You can see my computer's well, I'm gesturing to something you can't see. But from this screen, you can see my computer's off because we're running everything through Amanda's. So, yeah, so I jotted some notes down. I don't know how helpful they will be, but to maybe help guide the improvisation a little bit. The it's always a challenge when improvising, trying to make it sound cohesive. It's really easy to just sort of meander from one thing to another. It's a lot harder to just start playing something and then think, okay, I've got to remember at least the gist of this so I can play it as exactly as possible later and make this sound like, rounded, cohesive whole thing, piece of music. So that's absolutely going to be a challenge here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it or not because I have a tendency to kind of half forget things as soon as I've played them. So I think I've blabbered on enough. Let's see what I come up with for outsiders. Sorry, outsiders. Same thing Amanda did. Outsider, singular. All right. We'll give Amanda a minute to come back. I guess she can probably shout down when she's back, or maybe I'll be able to see. We'll see. Yeah, the notes actually did help a little bit. I'm glad I took those. I tried my best to illustrate stuff in the story through the music. And you might have noticed as it ended in major, here it started in minor. Here, so I very purposely changed keys towards the end to reflect the mummy's sort of realization that he's a mummy, may as well embrace it and go with it and be as happy as possible. Hopefully that came through. That's what I was going for. So yeah, that was fun. I'll have to do this again sometime. That was kind of cool. Maybe take notes from the beginning and not start halfway through. Oh, I can hear Amanda talking. I have no idea what she's saying. So I'm going to stop now. Good night.
Do that again. Do that again. I know David wasn't sure when to stop. I wasn't trying to make him stop or anything. I just said that I said that in the chat that maybe we should do this again and more often. This could be one of the Patreon things that we do, because I have a bunch of different ideas, obviously, and I know, different things that I want to do, but this is kind of nice. I like it. I actually toyed around with this idea of being like its own show. Hi.
Stop the recording.
Oh, not yet, but thanks. Yeah, I had actually toyed around with the idea of this being its own show. But I don't know. That's a lot of work. But now that we've done it, I'm like, what a cool thing. So, yeah, I really like that piece, dude. That was fun. Yeah. David's like, that would be cool. Now that you've done it, you're like, that'd be kind of cool. Or we could keep it like this as like part of the magical mystery hour, and this could be, kind of like the extra thing on the podcast. Keep it with the Patreon on YouTube, and then eventually it goes into the podcast. I'm trying to get this cord untangled. Sorry. So I don't know, but it's kind of fun. So we'll be doing this again. I don't know if it'll all be Lovecraft. Got to find stuff that's in public domain, which I was like, okay, so it's like some creepy horror stuff that's in public domain. And I Googled something akin to that, and it was like Lovecraft. And I was like, oh my gosh, perfect. What a perfect way to start. So I forgot to download it, but I'll do it right now. Paul also sent something he wanted to share with you guys, as Paul couldn't be here tonight. Friday nights are tough, but it's also like a night that's better for me and some viewers too, because we don't have to worry about work and things like that. Work in the morning. And yeah, Emily, I know it's such a cool Patreon perk. Anyway, so yeah, I don't have to worry about work in the morning. And then if I get in a show, like Fridays are typically rehearsal free days. So I don't have to worry about moving stuff around days of the week. So I was like, no, Fridays are good days. And then, so I just made a little calendar. I sent to Paul, and I was like, hey, if you want to, join in these, let me know. And actually, Paul was ready to do this one. And then he's like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do it. But he wanted to share something with us. So, I'm going to share with you what Paul sent, a little video that he made. Hold on. I wanted to make sure that was ready. This little video they made that he wanted to share with all of us. I'm going to play around with the size as well. Let me see. Maybe if let's see if it looks okay in this screen. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's okay. So let's take a listen to what Paul had to say, this kind of mysterious thing that happened to him. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear the beautiful, beautiful reverb in this room? I'm in a jail cell here at work at Oxnard PD. And do you see these like speaker holes, or probably these vents in the roof ceiling. They're gonna be part of a little story I want to tell you. But first, I am going to exit the jail facility and take you to my office. Thank goodness there was no one in there. I'm gonna go up the stairs here. It's a very long staircase. That was one flight, or a story. Down the hall here a little bit. All right. Let me close the door so I can talk to you guys. First of all, I wish I could be there. I'm sorry I couldn't make it, but I still wanted to give you all a little magical mystery story. So I'm here in my office. It's a little cluttered right now because we're selling autism awareness shirts. Anybody want one? Emily got one. So why was I in the jail cell and set this whole story up there? So once upon a time, it was actually 2 Octobers ago. I was here working late. We had just finished the, we call it Spooktacular at the station, a community Halloween event. And it was probably about 10 p.m. Most of the people, let me see if I can set this down so I don't have to hold it. Mostly everybody had gone home, and the station gets really quiet at night. Like after about 6 o'clock, everyone who has offices upstairs is gone. So what's really fun and interesting, and I've gotten to hear a lot of fun things over the years, is my office. In fact, this wall in particular is directly above that jail cell that I was showing you. And sometimes individuals who are in that cell are a little hopped up on some drugs or a little mentally unstable, and they like to make a lot of noise. Scream. At one time we had this opera singer who was down there just high as a kite singing, and I get to hear that here in my office. So this particular October evening, I was here, as I mentioned, it was late. I was finishing up, I had to do a social media post and a press release and all this stuff. So I start hearing whoever's in that cell screaming. It sounded like a man, and it was like a moan scream. It was like a like half yelling, half moaning. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, this guy's really going for it. And it went on for about maybe 10 minutes. And I was wrapping up stuff and like, wow, this guy's really got some pipes. So I went downstairs, and the booking office is right at the bottom of the stairs where our booking officers work and monitor everyone who's in the jails. They got cameras in every cell. They got to keep an eye on people, make sure they're not doing anything harmful, self-harmful to themselves in there. And I poked my head in. My buddy Keith was working, and I said, wow, you got a real screamer in there. And he said, huh? I said, someone in the jail got some pipes. And he went, jail's empty, bro. And I said, oh, did you just take, because those are holding cells that when officers make arrests, we hold 2 or 3, till we collect like 2 or 3 people, they'll get put in a booking van and taken to county jail. And so I thought maybe he had just been transferred. And I said, oh, so what, did you guys just take take him to county. And Keith said, it's been a quiet night. We haven't had any arrests in hours. So I went into the office and I looked at all of his monitors, and every jail cell was empty. This is probably the closest I have to a ghost story that I've experienced. As you know, it's like my lifelong dream to actually see an apparition or experience a ghost. But was it the echoes of the past? Someone who had a terrible time in that jail cell calling out to me on this Halloween event evening? Well, again, I wish I could be there with you guys tonight, but I'm sure I'll check out Amanda's story later on. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon and of this podcast. I love Magical Mystery Hour, and I love having y'all as a part of this magical, mysterious community. Have a great rest of your night.
All right. Yeah, Paul Sandler was like, what a cool story. It's like, and we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, I can't really figure it out. He said, I considered the fact that it could be some kind of prank. He said, but I know that guy, and he's not really a prank, and I don't think he even realized I was working that day. What a weird story. Yeah, Emily says, that's so creepy and cool at the same time. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, with that, I guess we're going to finish it up there. That was such a cool night. I really liked it. Yes. So much fun. I was trying to figure out earlier. I realized it's like, let me see. I have, wait, is this is what I'm looking for. No, because it would have popped up. I have the Magical Mystery Hour music somewhere in this whole long list of things, or I should. But yeah, I don't know why it's not here. I was like, dang it. But that's all right. Like I said, I wasn't really putting sound effects in, so that way if I wanted to edit it later, I haven't decided yet if I'll see what Paul thinks. You know, should we put the story in the podcast, like so be like a Patreon, you guys get to hear it first and live and all that, and then eventually we put it on the podcast as like maybe, you know, as an extra bonus. I don't know, haven't decided. But yeah. David, moan like a ghost, believe it or not, jail. Serona should get that. That's what I hear. It's overcook, undercook. Anyways, so yes, we're gonna finish it up there. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the Patreon community. We so appreciate it. It's been an incredible journey so far, and season 2 is already cooking up and looking cool. And I'm just really so excited to be here and share all of this with you and have these really awesome hang nights. So yay. All right. Well, thank you guys again. I just can't thank you enough. And as I always say, yes, Serona says straight to jail. But yes, so have a wonderful night, and we will let you know when we schedule the next official episode of Magical Mystery Hour, as well as the topic. If you weren't here when we picked those topics, we'll let you know what the next one is and when, and then I will also let you know. See, now that we've done this, I'm like, I have all these different ideas for these Patreon nights, but I just want to do this again. But we'll let you know when the next Patreon night is. Again, it'll be probably another Friday in May, so that way we can see you there. So yeah, all right. Well, I hope you enjoy your week, the rest of your, or I should say your weekend. Have a wonderful evening, and I cannot wait to see you all soon. Good night.